A really interesting question is, who is the war really between? Is it between Harry and William, or is it really between Kate and Meghan? Ever since Prince Harry released his book and made a lot of interviews around it, complaining about his and his wife's treatment at the hands of the royal family, some people would say there's been a kind of psychological warfare between Harry and William. And now is a good time to evaluate who's winning that war. There's a different style in approach, different weapons in this war. Sibling rivalry, we know, is psychologically a very common problem and produces some of the most venomous animosities. Are we dealing with a kind of sibling rivalry here? The main weapon in the war that Harry has been using is a lot of publicity, a lot of interviews, publishing books, complaining about the royal family. Some people have described it as whining now. Is there a sense in which if you complain too much, after a while, people begin to become a bit tired of the complaining? William, on the other hand, has not actually ever directly come back at Harry over any of these, what must have been very wounding accusations, and he must have been very tempted to have his day in the spotlight and respond. Instead, William has been deploying a very interesting series of psychological tactics. First of all, he's kind of ignored Harry. This is a very powerful move, something that as a psychiatrist I often advise people to do when they've got an enemy of some kind. So William has been ignoring Harry, he's appeared aloof, and he's gone on with his job. And therefore he's retained, some people would say, his dignity. He's ignored Harry, he's retained his dignity, he's not complained, he's not responded, he's gone on and done his job. This is the weapon that William is using. Between the two brothers, who's winning this public relations war? It would look to me as if William is winning this war, and we can learn some lessons in our own personal wars from what's going on between Harry and William. If you think about what's going on here through the psychological lens of sibling rivalry, what's really going on here is what often happens when the younger sibling is attacking the older sibling. And that is because the younger sibling is jealous of the older sibling's increased status. Obviously, this is magnified a millionfold in the case between William and Harry. William is going to be a future king of England and was born that way, and Harry kind of knew that almost from the moment he was born. So if you believe in the psychological theory of sibling rivalry, then this is bound to be magnified a millionfold in the case of Harry's and William's relationship. If Harry is attacking William because he wants to get the kind of significance and publicity in the media where it looks like he's replacing William by becoming as important as William because of all the media attention, if that was the psychological ploy here, then it looks to dispassionate observers as if that is failing. Harry did appear to become more important than William temporarily, but then it faded, and now he's become a relatively obscure figure again, whereas William continues to dominate the headlines. Harry made a kind of opening raid on the castle, the edifice that was the status of William. His attack appears to have been repelled, and therefore William, at this level, with this analysis, appears to be winning this element of the war. What I think is often forgotten when two men, two brothers, appear to be at war is actually the main generals in the war, maybe behind the scenes in the form of the wives. Is it really the case sometimes that two men want to go to war, brothers in this instance, or is it the case that actually it's their wives behind the scenes that are stoking the conflict up? That is often the case. In this case, we've got Meghan and Kate. Maybe in the background, they are the real people administering the war. And maybe if one side is winning and the other side is losing, we're seeing superior tactical brain power in the form of Kate as opposed to Meghan. Now, the other really interesting thing about this one is if it's actually the wives driving the thing and they appear to feel at least one side that they're losing, they tend to get very annoyed with their main soldier, which is the husband. And he tends to get the brunt of it at home if actually it looks like they're not winning the war. And this has interesting long-term implications because it can lead to a split. Some divorces occur in a roundabout way because of this kind of split. A really interesting question is, who is the war really between? Is it between Harry and William, or is it really between Kate and Meghan? Even before Harry split from the royal family in a very formal sense, the press reported he seemed to have a different attitude to the royal institution compared to William. This fits in with sibling theory in terms of birth order effects that psychologists have been researching for the last 20, 30 or 40 years. We know that the older child will tend to embrace authority, become an authority themselves. They will tend to want to be part of the status quo. That is partly something to do with what happened when they were children, and the older child was often given parental type responsibility by the parents for looking after the younger child. So the older child tends to be more conservative politically, tends to therefore want to be part of established institutions. And we see this being played out quite clearly in the case between William and Harry. Harry, the younger sibling, tends to be more rebellious, rejecting of authority, and Harry's played that psychological role perfectly in terms of what you'd predict from psychological theory. Now, the problem is this, that having broken away from the royal family, Harry was backing another horse, as it were, in terms of how to make his way in the world. And it turns out that William sticking with the royal institution has proved to have a public relations advantage. The royal family and the royal institution has trundled on inexorably and produced for William a series of public relations opportunities that means it appears he's winning the war with Harry. It turns out that having lots of contracts with various media outlets like Netflix and Spotify, in the case of Harry and Meghan, is nowhere near as effective a public relations weapon as being a member of the royal family. Never complain, never explain. This apparently is the catchphrase that captures the royal family's attitude to life in general and troubles in life. Most of the press believe that is the way the royal family approaches difficulties. It's very interesting because what we've got is a kind of culture war. You've got a culture war between that approach, which is a stiff upper lip, stoical approach. Retain your emotions, do not express them, maintain emotional control. This was taken to such an extreme that when Diana died, the Queen, who is a beloved national treasure, was accused of not actually demonstrating enough emotions in response to Diana's death. But what the Queen was doing was demonstrating this approach the royal family takes, which is stoical, stiff upper lip. Harry, in this culture war, has gone the other route. He's gone down the therapy route. Some people would say the psychobabble route. He said, you must always talk about your emotions. You must always express them. He's given interviews with famous therapists where he's advocated what some people would describe as a kind of emotional incontinence. Let it all hang out. He's criticized, basically, the idea of the stiff upper lip. You've got a culture war going on between these two very different psychological approaches. And one of the interesting questions is, which one is winning? You'd have thought that Harry should be winning because his approach is more young, it's more modern, it's more of the moment. Whereas William's approach comes from thousands of years of this approach to life. Yet it does look as though, although William is supposedly unfashionable, this other approach, the stiff upper lip, never complain, never explain, is winning. In any sibling rivalry, perhaps in particular in one that appears to be full of animosity in the way this one has appeared, in the way it's been reported in the press, it is not the case that the war will be over anytime soon. These can go on for a long time. A sibling relationship is actually the longest relationship you'll experience in your life. You will know your sibling and be with your sibling and have a kind of relationship with them, even if it's a negative one, for much longer than you may be married, or for much longer than you may know your own parents. So, one of the questions is, where is this war going to end? Is it ever going to end? And how will the future battles be fought? If Harry feels that throwing salvos of complaints about bad things he believes the royal family has done to him and his wife has not worked, Will he up the salvos? Will he get new artillery? Will he make deeper and more profound and more disturbing complaints? Or will he try another strategy and abandon the complaint strategy and go another route? Will he try to take the moral high ground, which is what some people have said that William is doing? Will he maybe turn his hand to great works and do more distinguished things to compete with William? Will William, if he suffers future salvos from Harry, finally crack and not continue with the dignified, remote, aloof, stiff upper lip? And will he crack under the pressure and come out and say something which actually is very out of character with the strategy he's adopted? We don't know what's going to happen. What we do know is this war is not over yet.